What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 189 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about The Coffin. This is a 4-issue miniseries written by Phil Hester with art by Mike Huddleston. This is from IDW, and this is the story of Dr. Asher Ahmed, who is building this super durable polymer that will, if you encase it around a body right when it dies, it will prevent the soul from leaving the body. And then basically he has allowed for eternal life through the use of a robot suit and this polymer. And this is very, very similar to the story of Swamp Thing. You have a mad scientist who has created some kind of super awesome project, and then this evil corporation kills the scientist, and then through that project and through the scientist's death, the scientist is able to live on in the form of a monster, and then they go around righting wrongs that were done to them, and then later just righting wrongs. This is basically the story of Swamp Thing, except that it being a organic monster, instead it's actually a mechanical monster. It's a giant robot zombie thing that you see right there. And I don't really mind that this is very heavily ripping off on Swamp Thing. I kind of like Swamp Thing a lot, so I kind of like this a lot. It doesn't bother me that this is very heavily borrowing from Swamp Thing. I will say I am the kind of person, I really like Phil Hester's artwork, so every time that I see his name on a book, I instantly think, oh cool, he drew this, and then no, he was the writer on this. Mike Huddleston does some really good work here, very atmospheric. It uses a lot of shadows because about 95% of this book is black and white, so it does use a lot of shadows. It's a book that deserves to be in black and white, I will say that. There's one very short story at the end of the book that's in color, and it's not bad, but I do think that this property works a lot better in black and white. It's something that I think is better in black and white than it would be in color. That's just my opinion. Mike Huddleston is a very good artist, but I really like Phil Hester's artwork, so every time I see his name on the cover, I instantly think, oh cool, he drew this, and then I'm a little bit let down when I find out that he didn't. I had the same thing when I talked about the creator-owned book Mythic a couple of months ago. But anyway, I like this book quite a bit. I don't know if I have much else to say other than it's very Swamp Thingy, but we have this character who, unlike Alec Holland, who we really didn't know anything about him in his pre-Swamp Thing days, Dr. Ahmed here is very much a jerk. He is not the kind of guy that you would expect to be your protagonist in this series. He is pretty much just interested in doing his work. He has a daughter that he knows about, and he's never even seen her before, and she's in like kindergarten or first grade. So he is very much a horrible human being. He has ostracized all of his friends and pretty much only keeps people in his life if they are able to help him with his work. And then during his near-death experience, or I guess his actual death experience, he basically becomes the kind of character that you wouldn't mind seeing in this series and seeing him do good things and being a hero. It may seem a little bit far-fetched that he would go from being such a self-involved jerk to being so selfless and trying to help people and save people, but I didn't mind because I definitely didn't want to read a story about the guy who we saw in the first issue. But other than that, I like this book. The pacing is a little bit weird because it's only 4 issues long, and the entire first issue, it's basically the very end of the issue where he becomes this robot zombie thing. And then after that, it's not really until the last issue that things really start kicking into high gear, where he goes after the CEO of this corporation that came after him. So I feel like the pacing is a little bit wonky, but again, it doesn't bother me. It's not a deal breaker. There's so much about this that is good that a couple of not so good things, like the pacing needs a little bit of work, and the character transformation is a little bit unbelievable. Those things don't really bother me that much in the grand scheme of things. Also included in this trade paperback, you get to see, or actually this is a hardcover, I don't know if there is a trade paperback, but included in this volume, you get the original series pitch by Huddleston and Hester. And there's some very interesting things in that pitch. If you are interested in working in comics, I would always recommend looking at any series pitch or character pitch or anything like that that you can find online or in a book like this. I would always recommend looking into these things and seeing what that creator did and how they did it. This looks like it was typed up on a typewriter, because after they typed it up, they realized that there were a couple of typos, and then they went in and they fixed those typos. There were entire paragraphs that they would put a big X through saying like, no, we're not going to do that. It's very interesting how this pitch is pretty much identical to the story that we get here, but this is the only story featuring the characters that we have here. This is not part of an ongoing series, but the pitch is acting like it could be part of an ongoing series. At one point in the pitch, they had a section titled Other Possible Stories, and at one point it even mentioned the Resurrection Man from DC Comics, and they just had a big huge X through that saying only for DC. So I guess at one point they weren't even sure if they were going to be pitching this to DC or some other company. I think at one point they had a note there saying for Oni Press, and ultimately this was reprinted by IDW, so I'm assuming that originally it was done through IDW also. But I thought that was very interesting. I always love getting to see the creative process of anything that I enjoy, movies, TV shows, and books, so I really liked seeing the pitch for this series, and it's very interesting to see how it goes from that to the final product. At least I thought it was interesting. So if you think that's interesting also, then you will want to check this book out for sure. So overall, those are my thoughts on The Coffin. I really liked it, liked the art, liked the story. It's definitely something that you guys should check out if you're into that sort of dark, semi-surrealist superhero kind of genre. You got a foreword by Guillermo del Toro at the beginning, and he talks about how this is very similar to a lot of his movies, and I really didn't pick up on that the first time I read it, and honestly, I didn't pick up on it too much the second time I read it, but then again, I'm not that familiar with his movies. I've only seen like 3 of them. So if you're a huge fan of Del Toro, more than I am, then you might like this book because he claims that it's very similar to some of his work. So anyway, those are my thoughts on The Coffin. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.